Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MSU Wealth Management Association podcast, a show where two Michigan State students take turns interviewing financial advisors and other professionals in the wealth management industry to figure out if a career in the financial planning space is right for them. I'm Justin Halverson, a senior finance major at Michigan State and the current president of MSU WMA.
Our guest today is Todd McClain. Todd is a current partner at Plant Moran Financial Advisors. He has a Master's of Finance from Walsh College, a Bachelor's of Finance from Michigan State University, and additionally holds the CFP and msuwma designations. Todd, thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right. So this show is kind of a show to help students understand what financial advising is. So right off the bat, can you tell us why you decided to pursue a career in finance? Was that something you always thought about doing?
Yeah, and my path to where I ended up is a little different, I'd say, than normal. So after high school, I did not go straight into college. I joined the Navy, and one of my tours in the Navy was in Somalia, and so we were off the coast of Mogadishu for over 90 straight days, and we were just doing this little 3-mile loop. And as you can imagine, spending 90 straight days in one particular place, all the books that you originally brought, you kind of read through them. And so we had kind of a book exchange, and I found a book called Personal Finance for Dummies. And so I read that book in probably a couple of days. I thought it was one of the most incredible reads. And it was just very eye-opening to me. And I knew at that moment that I wanted to have a career in financial planning, but I didn't really know what that meant at the time, or even quite frankly, the word financial planning. I just knew I wanted to have a career in investments. And so next time we pulled into a port, I bought some more books on investing. And one of it was a value book. Some of the other ones are just more just how to make money in the stock market, that sort of thing. But at that moment, I knew my career was going to be in investments. And so when I finally went to Michigan State, hands down, it was going to be in finance. And my direction was full steam ahead into investments of some shape or form. I wanted to do financial planning, wanted to do wealth management, even though I didn't know what those terms meant at the time, but that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't interested in making cold calls or selling products, and just happened to find Plant Moran Financial Advisors by accident, and the rest is history. Now I've been here for 19 years and loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. So you started at Plant Moran right from Michigan State then?
Correct. Yeah, I did an internship right after my junior year in Southfield, and then started full time in Southfield as well after my senior year.
That's very cool. So do you mind telling us what you guys do at Plant Moran? I know there's a lot of people call themselves financial advisors. There's that traditional stockbroker stigma that sometimes comes with that. So can you tell us what you guys do and how you would define what a financial advisor does?
Yeah, I think the way that Plant Moran does financial planning, the best way to describe it is that we are a client's personal CFO, and so we take a very holistic balance sheet approach, and spend a lot of time really diving into the balance sheet. So it really entails just more of the cash management, investment planning, education planning, retirement planning. Business succession, wealth transfer, insurance, tax planning. And so it really just kind of encompasses everything, and acting as the quarterback and connecting the dots between all of those different areas. So you asked the question is, how is that different than I'd say other financial advisors or planners? I mean, it's really different. I mean, financial planning in general is a process. It involves goal setting, analyzing, evaluating financial status, developing and implementing a plan, and ongoing monitoring. But wealth management, I think, takes that a step further because it really involves financial planning. However, it incorporates, I'd say, kind of everything else: the investment management, tax planning side of it, the wealth transfer and estate planning, as I mentioned, and more of the trust services as well. That it can be a big part of it.
So it's just so much more than the investments, right? It's like a lot of people start with the investments, like you said, but as you get into it, there's so much more. The world's getting so complex. You need like you need to have all these different things tied in together. So that's great to hear that. So I talked about the CFP a little bit earlier and the SEMA. Do you mind going into those? What is the CFP and what is the SEMA designation?
Sure. So the CFP is the Certified Financial Planner designation. I would kind of equate that to the recognized certification similar to CPA for accountants. The CPA meets educational requirements established by the CFP board, and it's intended to commit to a fiduciary duty to act in the client's best interest. I mean, that's really kind of the big thing behind the CFP. The SEMA is a Certified Investment Management Analyst, and I would say that is a designation that is a little bit below the CFA. So the CFA being the Chartered Financial Analyst, and so SEMA kind of falls in that same category, really, where it's really more based on analytics. But I have nothing bad to say about the SEMA, but I do think that the CFA is a pretty strong designation too. If you're interested in more of the analytical side, more of the investment analysts and portfolio management.
Okay, the portfolio management. That's what I've always heard, right? That's what the SEMA is always kind of equated with. That's how I always remember it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, when I was going through the testing, I mean, we spent a lot of time understanding more of the portfolio management side of it from a bond perspective, duration, equity analysis as well. But I do think the CFA really just takes that significantly a step further.
That makes sense. I know that's a popular one, certainly the CFA. So besides financial advisors, CFPs, SEMAs, when you're working with clients, are there any other high level like financial professionals, CPA you've talked about, that you deal with in your day-to-day life that are really important to clients that you're clients of yours?
Yeah, I mean, we take a very holistic approach, and we think that the team approach to managing clients is extremely important. So when you think of the balance sheet, we're not experts at everything, and that's not our job. Our job is to kind of connect the dots, and so we think it's important to work with the client's CPA. They may have other investment advisors, and so acting more as the chief investment officer. There could be insurance brokers. There's definitely attorneys in the mix, and so as I mentioned, I think it's important to be able to connect all the dots and have a one team approach in serving the client. And I mean, we even within Plant Moran, I mean, having multiple different folks that you can bring in who are experts in different areas, whether it's real estate or a specific business segment. It could be our Cressa group or our corporate finance group if they're interested in selling. And so, it's important to be able to bring in all the experts as appropriate. I'm not an expert in everything, and that's not my job. My job is to know enough and be dangerous and bring in the experts when appropriate.
That's awesome. I love that. Kind of, when I was at Plant Moran, I always talked about the balanced life, and it's so important. I know students, I think a lot of younger students value that nowadays to have that. So it's great to hear. So now that we've heard a little bit about what you guys do and what a career can look like as an advisor, I know here at Michigan State, we have a kind of a CFP program set out for us, but that wasn't always the case. So do you mind talking a little bit about what your experience was at Michigan State as a finance major? Did you have any classes that you took at Michigan State that really stood out that have helped you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly going back a couple decades when I was at Michigan State. But you're right. I mean, we didn't have the wealth management program at the time, and so going into finance, a lot of the classes were geared towards, I'd say, more of the corporate finance side. And so being an analyst at a Fortune 500 company or something along those lines, I mean, that's really what a lot of it was geared towards. And secondly, it was banking. So getting into the bank side, whether you're going to be a corporate or mortgage or corporate or individual mortgage lender or something along those lines. And it was very different to try to get some exposure to what I'd call traditional financial planning, which is what I wanted to do. There was an investment class, Finance 312, I think it was. And but after that, it was all more security analysis. So really kind of working for a portfolio company, if you will. And a lot of the companies that were recruiting on campus were really focused more on the sales side of it. So whether it was insurance or some sort of product based, that's not exactly what I wanted. So it's really glad that Michigan State was able to implement more of a wealth management program that is geared toward those that want to spend a lot of time in wealth management or financial planning or a career in one of those two areas. And I'm glad that they looked at the CFP curriculum and designed their classes really based on what the CFP is designed for schools like Michigan State. So when students come out of Michigan State, they can actually sit for the CFP exam.
Yeah, it's very cool. I personally love that. It's fantastic. I think most finance majors, it's still that way. You know, they kind of think they're going to all go on Wall Street and work in the corporate world. And so, yeah, it's fantastic that we have that program. While students are working through that, is there anything they should be keeping in mind? Anything students who are interested in wealth management at Michigan State, or maybe any students in college in general, that they should be kind of keeping in the back of their mind while they are working toward the CFP or a career in wealth management in general?
The advice that I'd give there is that there's so many different areas of wealth management and financial planning. And so, you know, you could certainly be on the individual client side as an example. You could work for institutions, could be 401ks, 403bs, foundations, and endowments. So a completely different skill set if you're going to be working with institutionals versus individuals. But there's also the operational side of financial planning and wealth management too. And so what I mean by that is, you know, there's still products out there. So you could be working for a mutual fund company or an ETF on the sales team. You could be working for a broker dealer like a Merrill Lynch or a Goldman Sachs, and specialize in a particular product line or asset allocation strategy or even an asset class. You could work for an asset manager. So they're a separate account manager and they're buying and selling stocks on the client's behalf. And so there's a lot of different career paths that you can go within wealth management and in financial planning. And so I think the most appropriate thing to do is spend time doing things like this. Listening to podcasts and talking to other individuals in some of the different areas of wealth management, and what really kind of sparks your interest, because it doesn't always have to be on the client facing side. There's a huge opportunity on the operational side as well. A lot of different career paths that you could take, and not one is better than the other. It just really depends on what your interest is and where you want to be.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like that's the area of finance, personal financial planning, generally speaking, wealth management, that's growing the most. I personally wasn't aware of it. I always can't think of the stigma. So it's amazing to see all of these different opportunities. I know we at the Wealth Management Club are trying to bring a lot of those in. So yeah, we're excited about that.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't mention too is just fintech. And so you think about just the financial technology that are out there nowadays. I mean, it's amazing how quickly new fintech programs are coming out to make the job of financial planners a lot easier. And so if you have kind of that desire to work for a startup, a more in the technology side, but you really love the financial planning aspect too, I mean, there's a way to bridge those two together. There's a lot of new fintech where there's a few firms in the Metro Detroit area. Obviously in Silicon Valley, you'll find a whole bunch as well. But nonetheless, I mean, don't let it just stop you that it's just client facing only. I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities within the wealth management financial planning arena that you can get into.
Just a little bit of a follow up to that. Once maybe somebody has identified that they do want to go into the client facing side, what qualities do you guys as recruiters look for? What do you guys look for as college students, as people who would be successful financial planners? Is it the technical skills? Is it the client facing, the conversational skills, or is it both? What are you guys looking for?
I'd say it's all of the above. I mean,
Mm.
from a communication standpoint, you need to be able to communicate to clients. I mean, you're working with individuals or you're working with institutions, so communication is critical. From our perspective, just having analytical skills. So because we're looking at the balance sheet and trying to understand from a balance sheet approach, I mean, being able to connect the dots, I think is important. And so when I think of analytical and problem solving, I think that's extremely important as well. And a genuine interest. I mean, you have to have an interest on what's going on in the overall economy, what's going on in the environment, and how that's going to impact clients' portfolios. And so, having that general interest and willingness to spend a lot of time reading and educating yourself on what's happening and how it's going to impact your clients, I think is critical as well. I mean, I could keep going. I mean, there's a lot of different qualities, but the thing is you have to have that genuine interest to want to get in front of a client, and those are some of the skill sets that you can't teach. I can teach someone all of the things to look at from the economy standpoint, or the investments and asset allocation and asset location. I mean, a lot of that stuff I can teach, but I can't teach that genuine interest and desire to help clients, um, to be able to problem solve and connect all the dots. I mean, those are some of the things that I think are critical that cannot be taught.
That's great to hear. It's about being interested. So awesome. So before we end here, Todd, I guess I'll open the floor up to you. Is there anything else you'd want to say to any students at Michigan State or anybody who's interested, becoming a financial advisor?
Yeah, and I said this a little bit before in the podcast, but do your research and spend the time and talk to people. You can learn a lot online, but you can learn a lot more by picking up the phone call. And there's a lot of people out there like me who's willing to take 10, 15 minutes and just talk about our approach and talk about how we do things and give you some advice on how to get into this business and what are some of the challenges that you may face. And I would encourage you to do that across the board. There's a lot of resources out there. I mean, having LinkedIn is a great resource. I mean, you can get connected to a lot of different folks LinkedIn. So make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and use that as a starting point. You're probably not gonna find very many people that are gonna turn you down if you just say, "Hey, can I just have 10 minutes of your time? I just want to learn more about what you're doing and how your industry works." They may be busy, but if you're just patient and persistent, you'll get some time on their calendar.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. I know everybody I've asked has said yes. It's amazing how friendly everybody is in the industry. It's great. So, Todd, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Justin. Appreciate it.
If you like what you heard today, hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. The MSU Wealth Management Association is a student group at Michigan State aimed at training the next generation of financial advisors. For more information, check out our website, msuwma.com. See you guys next week.